Well, let's talk about Jira. So Jira is a software that allows you to manage projects. It's a glorified to-do list that allows you to create a number of projects and then assign folks to those projects and then create all the different tasks that folks are going to be working in that particular project. When you first log into Jira, you are presented with what is called a system dashboard. It's it's meant for quickly being able to look at the health of a project, and you can add and remove all sorts of widgets that you can drop in here that can tell you how many tickets have been created or how many tickets have been opened, closed in the last week, in the last 15 weeks, days, or within a particular sprint. You can put all sorts of statistical analysis here. You can put all sorts of graphs that can show, what is the speed of burn rates, of how many points you're burning every sprint. I mean, all sorts of things that managers love to look at this and say, oh yes, we are on track, and see how we're in progress, right? So they can point to their their supervisor and see and quickly look at this how effective you've been. Obviously, all of this data only makes sense if folks are actually updating religiously their tickets, they're giving some realistic points, realistic sizes, and going in and actually moving their task all along. Otherwise, the data here will be useless, right? So if you put good information in, you get good information out. If you put bad information in, you get bad information out. Projects. So you can't actually create a project. So we've asked the system administrator to create projects for you, which that you should have already been created for you. But it allows you to create all sorts of types of projects, if you could. We have created SCRUM projects, right, that work well with the Agile Scrum methodology, right, that uses all the jargons and all the idiosyncrasies of working in the Scrum methodology. So we've done that for you. It also, you can configure the workflow on how is it that your team is going to keep track of the different tasks. The default is to use a very, very simple 3 columns of all the different tasks that you're going to be creating, on whether they are in a to-do list that you haven't yet started, or as a sprint starts, that you're going to move them all along through in progress and eventually into the done column. If you're an administrator, you can add and configure this a little further. For instance, some folks like to be able to distinguish whether it's in progress and I've completed development as a software engineer. I've completed development, and I'm no longer going to work on it, but I've assigned it to someone else for testing. It has made it to a QA environment. Typically, in a software development environment, you have multiple environments that the software goes through. There's your environment, your local development environment. Oftentimes, that source code gets pushed into a development machine that is shared amongst the team, right? Where we can do some integration testing. That my Java class works with your repository, that works with somebody else's service, right? So we have one place that we can test all those 3 things. And then eventually you can then maybe move it over to a QA environment where the team might decide that they're confident enough that now QA engineers can actually start banging on this and try to break it, all right? But we're confident enough that it's no longer in development, right? For us, it's been delivered, right? It's done. So it's in the QA environment, and then from the QA environment, once the QA engineers give a thumbs up, that might be moved into another environment. It could be production, ready for release, or maybe into some staging environment where they can do some performance testing, some load testing. They can do all sorts of heavy load testing, and then once it passes that, it moves over to production. So there's quite a few different environments that you can go through. We're gonna start really, really simple. We'll just have one environment, right? Just one Heroku machine. Yes. So basically, we'll be just going from your local development environment to one production environment. Later on, towards the end, we're gonna make it a little more realistic, and we'll put a QA environment in between. All right, so it'll go from your local environment to a QA environment, and then it'll be moved to a production environment. Yes? All right, but we'll do that a little later. Right now, it'll be really simple: your local environment and production. That's it. So So some other folks might like to put some workflow in here where you have the in progress. You might have an additional column here in QA, right? Meaning I've pushed it, it's going to build, and it's going to be available in the QA environment shortly, right? And you move your tickets from in progress and you move it into QA. And there, the QA engineers and the product owners and the business analysts can bang on it and try to break it there, but it's no longer in my environment, right? And then once they're happy with it, they will close it and move it over to done, or if they find something wrong, they might move it back into progress for you to fix something, right? If something went wrong. Sometimes, ideally, at the end of the as the sprint progresses, the developer is responsible for moving things over to in progress, then to done, and then moving from to do in progress, and so on and so forth. And at the end of the sprint, hopefully everything will have gone through, and everything will be in the done column, and you'll be ready for the sprint planning for the next sprint. And the project manager or the Scrum Master says, great, we can close the sprint, and we can load it again with new to-do things for the next sprint, and then do the flow again. Make sense? We're going to just do these three really simple ones: to do, in progress, and done, which is the default. Right. Also, there's all sorts of types of tasks. There's epics, right, that allow you to tag certain. It's basically a huge user story, one big story. We want to create, being able to the admin manages services or users. That would be many different user stories, right? But that's one big story, the epic, or it might be a story. Typically, a story could be used for different things, but usually it means some new feature, right? That tries to solve some users' problems, some user requirements. But it's also used for if you want to use it for a time box research story, right? Where I'm not building anything new, but I'm just going to go off and research how JPA works, for instance. Yes, and I think the assignment asks you to create one of those, a research story. But it could be a design story where you're not really building a new feature, but you're designing or whatnot. But usually these are new features that we're building, the page for the user to list all the users or the services and whatnot. Yes. Generic tasks or bugs, right? Bugs. If something's wrong, somebody would list a bug. And everybody should be able to create these. If you can't, please let me know. Any of these types. Hopefully you all have all these permissions. This is where you can create the project here. By default, you're put in what's called the backlog of the project. The backlog is where the entire list of things that need to get done are listed in it's just one big bucket of things that we know we need to do. Usually the project manager and the Scrum Master and the product owner, they meet periodically, perhaps every week, and they groom this backlog. Right? They go through all these lists, the huge list, and they start adding priorities to these things. They say, well, out of all these thousands of things that we need to do, what should we focus on first? And they'll put this in the right order, and these stories will be in different levels of detail, right? A lot of the stories will be completely void of any detail, maybe just only a title, perhaps. All right, most of them will be like that. But as the product owner and the project manager talk to the users and the stakeholders, they'll be adding new knowledge to this. And once they feel that they're ready to be develop that particular sprint, they'll move them over into the sprint. They'll identify their developers and move them into a sprint and assign them to a particular developer. That developer might be responsible for maybe putting some more details to the ticket, right? As they research and identify what actually needs to get built, the developer might have to meet with the actual user and get some more information. But yeah, the backlog is very useful, having just a long laundry list of things that need to get done. It's also where you can create new sprints, right? So every week, like today, you'll create a new sprint and start working with, presumably you'll have a sprint planning meeting and start identifying the things that need to get done. This assignment suggest a couple of stories. I think one design story, one research story, one user story, I think, something like that, per user, per developer. Based on your particular use case, right? Each team will have a different use case. And you'll create these and then assign them to that sprint. Now the sprint planning meeting might be anywhere between an hour or 2 hours, depending on how big the team is and how much work, how long the sprints are. But then after that sprint planning, the Scrum meetings usually are very short, right? Anywhere between 5 and 15 minutes should be enough for daily Scrum meetings. So you would move, you would literally drag this into the sprint. All right, there's a couple of menus here. These menus are for being able to look at different projects. Usually, I presume you can only see one project. Maybe I don't know what kind of permissions you have, but there's a cog here that you probably don't have. That cog there allows you to see all the projects, like I have. I can see everybody's project. I can go in and look at everybody's information. So you probably only have this over here. You'll be using a lot of these two buttons, these three buttons here: the create, the boards, and the issues. Those are the ones that you're mostly going to be using, right? Create a new issue, create a new epic, be able to look at different boards, and looking at the different list of issues. You can't see all the projects probably. Boards. Board is where we're going to have the different columns that's going to show all the tasks that we're working on that particular sprint, right? And it's where developers move their stories along from to do to in progress to done, or back and forth, just moving between those three columns. And you can create boards. You can create any number of boards. You can create one board just for you, for the team, or for the organization, and you can create all sorts of filters on what is it that you want the board to show, right? For instance, you only want to see your issues, or you want to see all the issues in the team, or you want to see the issues in the whole organization. You can create all sorts of filters for this. You can you'll create a new board. I believe someone said that you can create boards. Is that right? You can? All right. And I imagine you can also associate filters to them, maybe? I don't know. Create a filter. You can create filters? Okay. All right. You can create a board from an existing project, right? Which is exactly what our system administrator did. And you can give it a name. This could be the Team 1 board, Team 2, Team 3 board, or the organization board. And then from the boards menu, you can jump around and select the board that you want to look at. Epics, as I mentioned earlier, allows you to create a large story, user story that presumably will be associated to multiple user stories that define how to build that. If you click on the create button, it allows you. There's a drop down that you can whether you want to create a simple story or an epic. And then just give it a very high-level description of what is it that you're building. I believe the assignment asks you to create 3 epics, right? 1 per use case, right? So I think Team 1 will create 1 epic, Team 2 will create another epic, and Team 3 will create another epic, depending on their use case. Yes? So for instance, you would create an epic called admin services. You can either create the epic from the create button at the top, or you can from the main menu, from the board, from the backlog. Once you're looking at the backlog, there are 2 filters over here called versions and epic. If you click on the epics, it expands and it shows you all the different epics and all the issues, all the tickets that are associated with that epic. Right? In your case, for the users epic or for the services epic, you'll have at least 3 stories per user. So you have 9 stories, yes, in one epic, in the user's epic, in the admin user's epic, and 9 stories in the services epic, and you have another 9 stories in the service category epic. Make sense? And each one of them will be a design story. So 3 design stories, 3 research stories, and 3 user stories. Yes? right? And that is each one is going to be responsible for that. So if you create epic, it bumps you to the create epic screen over here. Once you've created an epic, you can create a brand new story. Same thing, clicking on the create button. I didn't put it here. If you click on the create button, you can now create a story. You create an actual user story. Say your admin searches for a service, and then you can associate it to the epic, and say what epic is this user story for, right? You can type in and it'll fill it out for you. And then in the epics you can now filter and say I want to see all the stories in this particular epic, right? So if you click on it, so it says how many issues are in there, and there it is. It's listed. It's listed there as a story in that epic in the backlog. It doesn't yet belong in any sprint. We haven't created yet a sprint just yet. If you click on the user story, it'll show a quick view of that story on the right hand side, which you can collapse if you want. But it'll be a very, very quick overview, and you can scroll through this and look at the details of that story. Or you can click here on the hyperlink, and it'll take you through the entire screen that describes that particular story. So issues. So issues are generic issues would be things that tasks and stories that you can create. You can either edit an existing issue, like the issue we just created. There's a menu here on the right hand side that you can select and click on edit, and then an edit screen comes up where you can type in the actual user story from the user's point of view. So for instance, here's a user story, right? As an administrator, I want to be able to search for a service so that I can edit it, right? And so we ask you to create a whole bunch of these, yes, and then update and save it back. If you navigate to the story, this is what it would look like, and you have a couple buttons here where you can edit it, right? You can add comments. As part of the assignment, I think we ask you to at least add a comment to a story just to practice that you can add a comment. Usually, this would be your main mechanism of communication. Well, obviously Slack and other communication devices, but to leave a trail of actual communication of what has been discussed about this particular issue, this would be the main way of communicating through these comments, right? Where you might ask for more information, and you would tag a person, and the person would get an email. The person can then reply, and all these comments, all the history of all the comments would be left here. You can drag and drop files, documents, so that are attached to the ticket, so images, pictures, screenshots, wireframes, horizontal prototypes would be added to the ticket, as additional information for the developer to build. You can assign it to somebody. Typically, you can assign it to yourself or assign it to someone else. Also, in the Scrum board, you're going to have the different columns, right? On whether they're in the to-do column, in the in-progress column, or the done column, right? You have buttons here that allow you to quickly move that story into one of those three statuses, right? Whether it's whether you're going to move it into the to-do column or move it into in progress, and so on and so forth. It says also who assigned it, who is it assigned to, who created the story in the first place. So this is the main place to manipulate the story. You can assign. If you click on assign, it'll pop up here that, or when you create the story, you can also assign it. One of the things that we're asking you to do is like dashboards and boards. If you cannot create them, right, something that you see that you cannot do, that the assignment asks you to do, assign it to a TA. Right, we're going to give you a list of all the TAs that are going to be responsible for your particular project. Right, so it'll be, one TA will have, I don't know, like 25 projects, right? And so you'll assign to them. We'll give you a list who to assign to. All TAs will be able to see all the projects, but there'll be one particular TA who's be responsible for your particular project. Okay, so and assign it to that particular TA. Right, we don't want to, assign everything to one single TA. All right, what else? You can link it to the epic. Also, you can move it to a particular sprint if you've created a new sprint. Sprints. Right. So in the backlog, you might have created multiple stories that some research stories, some bugs. Usually, these might be dozens, maybe hundreds of stories that in the backlog, right? That are years maybe worth of work that we need to spend building this product. And every sprint, in the sprint planning, we start moving things into the sprint. You click on the Create Sprint, and above it, you get a placeholder where you can now start dragging stories onto the sprint that are you going to work on that particular sprint. Once you have loaded it, you can say Start Sprint. You can start sprint, and there it goes. It'll ask you, is this a week-long sprint? Is it a 15-day sprint? How long is a sprint? Okay, and then the clock starts ticking when you click on Start Sprint. Right, the clock starts ticking. So you drag things into the sprint, click on Start Sprint, and then you start assigning these to folks. In the board, if you look at the active sprint, if you click on Active Sprint, it'll show you the Scrum board. And with all this one will show it for you, the ones that are assigned to you or the ones that are in your entire team. You can create all sorts of filters that you can see folks in your team, in your entire organization, or just you, only the tasks that are assigned to you, and you would be responsible. Every day as you start working on a particular task, move the task over to in progress. Right, maybe make a comment as you investigate the story. You would add comments to the story or questions to somebody to be able to answer these questions. And as you complete them, you would move them to done. Okay. Or you could assign it to someone else. I don't know how to do this, and you can assign it to someone else to help you. Right, and then you can move them, and then in the done. Okay. Any questions?